All right, I'm going to start. Ready to go?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Hello and welcome to another edition of Here's the Pitch, sponsored by Massa's Restaurants in St. Louis, 5 locations, stlmasses.com. Go there, it's a hoot, you'll love it. You can go to their website, find directions, find all the menu items, and hopefully my guest, by the way, I'm Brad, hello, your YouTube friend, you know that. But again, continuing on my series of reality stars, where have they gone? Today it's Norm, Real World Season 1. We know where you've been. Hello, Norm, we just saw you. You were just on the Paramount Network.
There I am. I know, for the lucky few that have signed on to the Paramount Network. Ta-da! We came back.
You guys were like a main selling point for the Paramount Network. Like CBS had their own online thing. They changed over to Paramount, and the main selling point was Season 1, the reuniting. I mean, that has to be a big thrill. I'm kind of being funny, but it was true. It was like, hey, this is the only thing you can only see it right here. Was that how you felt? And hi, how are you?
Oh, all the way around. I really thought it was going to be like a quick little reunion special that we've done over the years. We've done like a 10-year reunion in different things and different capacities, and kind of sit around the couch and share your stories and what are you doing in like 3 minutes or less. This really turned out to be almost an entirely new show. I mean, it really was. I mean, we got like 6 episodes, and I think we would have went with 8 had the COVID really not knocked out Eric, and then the crew ended up getting the COVID at the end, and so it got a little helter skelter there. We can get into later, but yes, I couldn't believe it. And at the time, Paramount Plus hadn't existed. There was like Paramount this and CBS, so I mean, they really just put it right out there. I mean, the Super Bowl showed up, and they started promoting. Here is Paramount, and who knew that people were going to reconnect to the whole storyline and to us again? So who knew? I mean, it was just kind of, it's kind of nutty.
And you guys clearly kept in touch with each other a little bit, but when there's rumblings of hearing that they want to put us in a house again, they want a full week of us. How did you guys sort of decide that you're all going to do it? Because it doesn't really work if 2 guys aren't there or 2 of you don't show up, and even though that Eric wasn't there and he was going to be there, what was it like just when you started hearing the rumblings of, oh, this is crazy? Like, I mean, were you in right away? Like, yeah, get me in there. And was there someone who was like, I don't know?
This happened rather fast, and definitely before vaccination and COVID. It was, we got the news like a couple weeks before January, and we were in New York like the first week, and I think we spent more time in quarantine than we actually did on camera, and so I don't know if it was an evolving scenario to expand this into something, but the Loft came on the market, and somebody there said, they were going to do like a 30th anniversary, and this was the 29th year, but they're like, this Loft isn't going to be here next year. They're going to take this building and shop it into a bunch of little apartments. So what was the Loft this is probably the last time before it literally physically becomes something else. And somebody said, hey, is this even a possibility? And just the entire shutdown left us all kind of in our homes, so we weren't getting a lot of work, we weren't really going anywhere. So it was a lot easier to kind of herd all these cats together. And for me, any opportunity to see the whole cast is just a thrill. I mean, I've just, grown to love these people. They really are my family. I've been able to just see them individually, but we've never been really able to all connect like this. And I also didn't really get to have a big relationship with Kevin, and that really opened up and gave a lot of opportunity to get to know him and get to know some other people's stories that, my 23-year-old self didn't get to know.
So, and what, you guys live there, right? I mean, they could have really just done a show where you guys sort of go to a house for maybe an hour, a couple hours, shoot you, and then you go to a hotel and have to, but you guys actually lived with each other again, right? Were they trying to kind of get the fights again?
Well, the interesting thing is that because everything was really restricted at that time in New York, and everything really was locked down and closed down. And I mean, I remember showing up at the airport, and the military was there, and you literally had to get on a list, start signing. They checked in with you, the state of New York, and the health department. They want to know where you were, where you went, what was going on, called you. They didn't even want you open the hotel doors. Like literally, it was kind of helter skelter. And I think our personalities are so magnetic together. If it had been an Airbnb somewhere up in the Catskills, that would have been just great. I think people like to see our connections. We had no idea that they were going to put us in the actual loft. Like I didn't expect that, because I just felt like somebody's there. How are you going to get somebody during COVID to let not only us in there, but a whole production company? I mean, there's 20, 30 of them that are also in there, and they're able to move back into the control room that they set up. So it was pretty spectacular, and it literally resonated these feelings, like when you go to a reunion and you see your class friends after 20, 30 years, and you kind of like revert back to when you were in high school. It was like that, and I do talk about that on the show. It was just overwhelming to come into the same space, but the same smells and the floor and the sound, like all of that kind of stuff. It was like a Time Warp bubble, other than us getting a little more gray and wrinkly and all that good stuff. It was pretty interesting, and it really came at a really interesting time that, so many things that we talked about 30 years ago were just repeating themselves in culture. Things that Kevin was talking about that were so relevant. And, maybe I was a little more sophomoric and just kind of like, oh, let's just have fun and run around the West Village and do whatever, and, Kevin was already one step into a professional life, teaching in college and doing stuff. And, there were some serious issues, and we're just like, let's just drink and have fun and have a party, blah, 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 and then, run around and do that kind of stuff. And, I don't think we got the chance to really hear his voice until kind of after the show. And unfortunately, someone that points out an issue or a problem in the country, like, look, a lot of people aren't getting a fair shake here. People are really getting shaken down. The police really, put their thumb is a little heavier on our head. And, and that was a great perspective. And his voice really had never been heard. In fact, all of our voices, America or the television landscape had never seen anything like the real world. And having a diverse cast, and then having that cast, share their opinions, and watching those opinions bounce up against each other. It's really fortunate. It's really fortunate that our cast, for the most part, we do try to listen to each other and try to resolve things as best as we can. Obviously, if you've seen the show, some other things happened that turned, not the way that I hoped that they would.
I'm going to ask you about that. I didn't realize I have all these. This is like question one. I have way, but I will get to. I promise. But I'm curious about just the production when you guys did it. Obviously, the first time, no one had done a reality TV show. Everyone's going in blind. Versus this, I'm not saying it was scripted, but they clearly you could see it on the screen. They would put a thing up there, and then it would get you guys talking, and then it made for the television show. What was the differences of production, basically? Was there any production at all that first season, or you guys just show up camera? They try to take whatever you're doing, and I mean the confessionals kind of help them kind of write some stories. But here it was
definitely really on target. I mean, it was pretty much like they tried to they didn't. It evolved. They try to go first real documentary. It's just we're going to get a story. There was a part of the production team that was like, look, we're going to get a story out of bringing 7 diverse people together, no matter what, from different backgrounds, and watching that happen. Also, we're going to get a story of putting people in a loft together, and it's going to be people are going to relate to that. It's like when you go to college and you meet your first roommate, you meet somebody that you've never met before. It's not like just somebody that you went to school with and you grew up 12 years in your little town or your big town or wherever. This really is, you've gone off and now you're meeting these other people. So there was always the potential to get so much story in there. But during our season, the producers, and they talk about this on the show, and it was really nice for them to actually come on a couple episodes and talk about this, was that they all got nervous. When the producers don't have a job all of a sudden, and writers don't have a job, and directors don't have a job, they're all going, well, how am I getting paid? What's going on? And they would say, oh, let's throw these pebbles in the pond, but they started to manipulate and do some stuff that made everybody really kind of paranoid, like setting up dates and putting things in the house or creating stories that you just didn't know about, because they just felt like, well, we're just nervous. This is going to be so dull and boring. And, but, they just didn't rely specifically on the casting. I mean, I think they pulled together natural storytellers that were going to open their mouth and yab about stuff, and that were inquisitive, and that were going to go into other people's lives and see what was going on. And that was kind of the strength of our definitely our cast. So in this particular journey, obviously we're really somewhat camera savvy after 30 years. We've been interviewed, we've been in all media types, all of us, all 7 of us. So, it's not like, oh, surprise, there's a camera right there, but we came there kind of professionally. We knew we were going to talk about our stories, and we knew that we were going to talk about like how things have changed. We were going to look at things of our past and then talk about that. And that was going to generate some stuff. Now, I thought maybe this would be like an hour special or something that we've already done. Not that it was going to expand outwards into like 6 episodes. And, that turned out to be really kind of cathartic. And I was really thankful for it, because it really flushed out a lot of stories. I had a unique story. It was very hard to tell in 92 about coming out and how they were going to do this. There was nobody out there at all in the public taking responsibility for being openly gay whatsoever at all. And the network wasn't crazy about that. Commercials weren't crazy about that. Nobody was crazy about that. So it was always dancing around me. And that was always an issue. And so it was so nice to come back and address that. And then to see the arc of history change so much. And even with Kevin's story, a lot of other people's stories were there. And they even, as you see the series, the producers come back in and actually, we're able to kind of put them on camera, put them on blast. And, I was like, one of the producers, he was closeted and gay, but they terrified. I mean, he's terrified for his job or whatever, but he wasn't like out. Nobody was out. So I had to point out to him that thanks to me, and then people watching his show, and then an entire country watching it, and then the world watching it, it kind of started to change minds and create allies for him several years later to come out and be professional. Thank you.
It was fun to watch, but of course we had drama, so we get Becky deciding she's going to take off. How are you and Becky? Becky didn't have a good conversation with Kevin, and then the follow-up one didn't go so well either, and then another one. Have you guys had any conversations since?
We have. We texted back and forth, and it would just kind of get a little. It started getting just long and in depth, and we just kind of came to a point like we just really respect and love each other. And somewhere down the road, it just doesn't seem that we're, her life, and maybe even with Kevin's life, is that this format is the best place to express themselves. You do have to trust so much in another thing. And unfortunately, it was COVID. A lot of people, we're all locked up for months on end, Becky included, months on end, isolated. And it has this kind of a psychological impact. And then all of a sudden you come back, there's so much going on. And you're just having such a good time. And that was the first time we saw the clips to engage, but we knew that we were going to discuss stuff from the past. We knew, to be prepared, and I think maybe she wasn't as prepared or just, she just had a different idea. Like we all had very warm feelings coming out of there. That's why we came back. But I guess there were some other points, and maybe she just didn't have access to the show or didn't check things out. And it just kind of really maybe caught her off guard a little bit. And then all of a sudden it got into that very uncomfortable space. And I could see it like just sitting there, and what the audience sees in this particular episode where it becomes really uncomfortable is that that is edited. It was much longer. It was like long, and it was going way too long. And I'm like, oh no, this is too long now. This is, and I could just see, she just felt like personally attacked, and I could see how that was coming across. And he was trying to talk about something much bigger, and the two is like oil and water, and they both have valid points. And I just was really hurt when she decided that this was just too much, and it was going to go down this how the course of reality television is, with the housewives and all the rest of this, like big explosions and I'm going to walk out and that kind of stuff. And she's like, I just don't want to be a part of that. And so, yeah, it was something.
In the year 2050, maybe we get you all back in the same. I was feeling bad for Becky because, Kevin has his point of view, and I said, Becky, just say this. Kevin, then Kevin can come back with that. But Becky couldn't really formulate what she was. I think she was worried about saying something she didn't want to say on camera, which I totally understand. Because in '92, you probably would have said it. You would have just said it, and you would have gone, and then it would have been over. But there. This is going to be seen, and you're like, and we're in this world where you can't say things, so it wasn't real.
Right, I know, and so exactly, and it was really real, and I think, yeah, you just, I wish there was just like, oh hey, this is really important information. It's really heady. Let me just get up and get a coffee here, walk around the kitchen, and I hear what you're saying, or just some way to kind of like spin it, and it just. Just came off like a sidewinder, and I really felt like it could have gotten. I really felt like it was going to go after watching this tennis match going off. I was like, holy crap! I got to shut this down. Something's really going to come out of Becky's mouth, and she's not going to be aware of it. Like I could tell. That this could really go bad. And then I felt bad because then, of course, I told her to shut up and I was trying to just shut it all down and she just wasn't taking the clues, like, pinching under the car, thing or stepping on her foot, because we really did go in we've always been together. So we do have a text feed and we chatted saying we're not going to go in and throw people under the bus and gosh, we're in our 50s, for God's sakes.
Yeah, well, I didn't plan on doing a 15-minute commercial for Paramount Plus, but I really did. I really love the concept of having you guys back in. Again, I wasn't going to ask, so we'll get into your other cast. I want to ask you about Heather B and Eric and everybody, how they're doing. And I understand it sounds like season 2 is getting this treatment as well, although I know for a fact, because he turned me down for this podcast, Dominic, I don't think will be there, which makes me sad. I love Dominic, one of my favorite reality characters. But I think this was so successful. It sounds like season 2 is going to have this come out on Paramount Plus. So there's your commercial, Paramount Plus. People should watch this. It's out there right now. I binged a little bit of it today. But Norm, you've got the movie The Wedding that you put together back in 1999 or 2000 in there. Tell me a little bit about what's going on with you, because you sent me a copy of it. It's actually fun to watch, to see some of your other favorite characters, but they're in character, and you got a special screening happening very soon. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so I did this film with the cast, back in '99 at the turn of the millennium, when we got it all together, and then finally got it up. We got it up to DigiDance up at Sundance, and then we started getting it through the film festivals back in 2001. And this particular film festival that we were in Houston, it's their 20th year, so they were going through their vault, and they contacted me about a month and a half ago and said, "Hey, here was one of the funniest screenings. Which we would be honored if you guys could redo the film, and we want to bring everybody in and all that good stuff." And we were supposed to be down there this week, and the film festival starts up on September the 30th. Maybe tell your viewers like some links to get there, because now it's going to be online because the Delta variant in Houston all wrapped down that it's really tough, and that the hurricane came through just like a week ago, put some people underwater. But yes, I talked with the other cast members back in the day, because so much was happening with the real world that we thought maybe it would go away, and then they would make books, and all of a sudden they make calendars, and they do this, and they do that, and your life would go up and down, and yet you really didn't see a lot from this project. It's like, wow, we're such a huge part of like MTV and everything, and there's not a lot of opportunities, and then a lot of people really felt that their character was assassinated on the show. When I talked with Corey from the San Francisco cast, she went to school with Rachel, and she did all these athletic things and all this stuff, and yet, she got barely any time. And the time that she got, she turned into this whiny blonde girl. And, you had big Pedro personality, big Puck personality, and big personalities, and there's whining. Well, that wasn't what happened. Corey was really instrumental in going all of these places, and yet they chose to show that side of your life. She went back to college. She was going to college with Rachel, and Rachel became like, Rachel, they went and climbed a cliff. Well, Rachel fell down like 7 times. She couldn't even get up this damn thing. And then all of a sudden she crawls, and it looks like she was the one that made this big cliff jumping, climbing thing. And Corey fell in it. She was the whining crazy person when she was athletic and did all this kind of stuff. And so she went back to college. Rachel is like this. Corey's a whining, and all of these students are. So the show becomes invasive. And in the early days of the Real World, a lot of people didn't know what they were kind of getting into. They didn't have social media. They couldn't really reach out. They would see us having a good time, and they got involved with all this. So over the years, in the early years, they came to me with these stories. And so I said, well, instead of just going and bitching, on some interview that's going to mean nothing on Rolling Stones or something, I said, why don't we creatively put together some project? What could it be? And so the wedding video is very much like a Spinal Tap, where we take all the different reality personalities in here, like Heather B and Julie and Lars and all the different seasons I could wrangle up. And the wedding videographer sees one view of them, and it's all a disaster. You see unedited disaster, which is scripted. I scripted it, wrote it. But then the end of the movie, like the 3 minutes, is this perfect, happy wedding, and everybody's personality has been wiped out and changed into something else. So it was a cathartic moment for us to actually go through and do something, and then do it in the technology that we're comfortable with, like, video. Like, I wasn't making a film, like, oh, we're not actors and this and that. So I kind of concepted it to fit within how the public would relate to us. Unfortunately, we were a digital film. We were the first of 4 digital films that went up to Sundance. One of them was Blair Witch, and no company could spend the money to bump it up to film. And there were no digital projectors. So it couldn't find its way out of its box. The internet didn't really have the ability to stream video. So it just kind of got acquired through Warner Brothers and a company called TLA, and just sat there for 15, 18 years. And then all of a sudden they just forgot about it. I didn't say anything. And the rights reverted back to me. But we had we would bring the digital projectors to these film festivals like Houston, and they ended up having an entirely other screening because it sold out rights. When they heard there was real world people, right? A lot of people are like, oh, reality people, they just poo-poo you. And then all of a sudden you go to these college campuses, and there'll be fire trucks and lines and shutting things down. Like, people underestimated us. Like, all of Hollywood has underestimated us from day one. And yet they build their careers off the top of most of our shoulders. I mean, you can't point yourself from The Office to Curb Your Enthusiasm. I don't care which line and how we've impacted dialogue, look, feel, everything in Hollywood. And you just move this arrow back to 92, and we're sitting on the tip of a pin, So, and yet we've really not benefited a lot, or a lot of people haven't even acknowledged us. I'm shocked. They just had these Emmys, and you'd think the show was interesting enough to come back that it would, it was Under the Boat, like Under the Sheets and boat thing. That was the nominated for the Emmy. Like, who cares with this boat show? Like, that actually was like major zeitgeist and culture. And here, I don't get it. So I'm glad you kind of have recognized some of that, and you brought a lot of our stories on and showed some of that interest, because a lot of people have just kind of written us off in a weird way. But this was a whole combination, this wedding video film, and I'm really happy. So now it's going to be on an online platform for its first time. So even if you can't go to Houston, you could, sign on and see the film. And it was just a pleasure to make. I couldn't believe all these people came back. And of course, the secret is it's a gay wedding, and no one knows, because I'm marrying someone named Sky. So it's kind of one of those names. And it's very sophomoric. So everybody comes in and they're like, oh my God. And then they find out, oh my God, he's marrying a guy. And it's way before they were doing the gay marriage stuff or all the rest of that garbage. And so people are laughing and giggling. And so it was a great way through humor to see some issues for my community that could come to light, that other people couldn't see. It was a teachable moment. And so, and it's very funny. We were able to get a really incredible soundtrack. I mean, we have some good connections in Hollywood. and we were able to get like Sweet Home Alabama. We were able to get actually the song Video Kills a Radio Star, which is the first song on MTV. And we put our wedding on the air date of MTV. So when you look at that thing, it says 1999, August 1st. That's when we get married. So we really rolled it in and played a lot with some other subversive things in the background.
Well, we'll get the link up. You sent me the whole thing, so I got to watch, and it's just fun seeing those guys kind of intermingling. It's like before the challenges were even big. You didn't see Mike from Miami talking to Heather B. So it's fun, and I'll get that link up there for you. NormanKorpi.com is your website, so people can look at you there and see you're selling art still, I believe, right? You're still in that. You're on Instagram, you're on Twitter, so people can find you on all of the socials, of course. But tell me kind of what else is going on, and then we're gonna get back into your season one.
So since then, I mean, in my storyline, I moved. I returned back to my hometown where I was spawned here in Ironwood, Michigan, in the upper part of the Midwest, in beautiful Lake Superior. And I've just had this. I've always had a love affair here. I've always returned here during the summer and the winter. It's great for fishing and hunting and all that good outdoor sports. It's a beautiful place. And so I've come back here and I've been able to get a hold of a house since the show. I have had a lot of people support me through my artwork. So, I do have a good size waiting list. And so the artwork has been good, and I'm working in a family bakery, my cousin's bakery. So it's just kind of connecting, on that level. And a couple of us from our original cast have talked about we really do have some kind of synergy. And even if they wouldn't have shown clips, we were giving them so much crazy, funny stuff. We just came in there just like a tornado. And I knew I had to turn up the temperature and be extra entertaining when Eric wasn't going to be there. I figured, okay, Eric's going to come and he's going to take a big chunk of the show on his shoulders. But when he wasn't there, I just kind of had to step up and yap and, run around and be extra stupid and be naked in the shower and anything I could do to kind of, save this show. And, I think we have a really good ensemble personality. I think a lot of people really connect to us, and it's funny. They crack me up. So I don't know. I think that there's some kind of vehicle. I don't know what, to kind of throw some of us back together again, 5 or 6 or 7 of us on some kind of a whacked out odyssey. I mean, if the Housewives can do it, I think why not us? I think we can offer something of mentorship and moving things forward, just not just ripping things apart and just seeing lavish lifestyles just thrown in front of you and diamonds dripping all over the place and all this other kind of stuff. But I think, with our stories and our backgrounds and just our sense of humor, if Paris Hilton could do a cooking show, I mean, God, hello. I don't know. I mean, Heather's great in the kitchen. So I don't know. There could be something going on. We're trying to throw it around there, see if there's something going on. There's a whole new team at Paramount, so it seems like we've got their phone numbers, and if something made sense, I think they would listen.
Yeah. Well, and I'm curious because you did do 2 challenges. The challenges came about 5, 6, 7 years.
Another one.
Okay, is it?
I've been asked to go back.
You gonna go? Mark Long has probably contacted you. Is that?
He wanted me to go during the whole shoot, so it was conflict. But they wanted, I don't know if you got a chance to E-Entertainment with Andy Cohen did a special, reality of 7-part history they had us all out there before we even knew about this whole reunion thing. And I think Buena Murray probably also was influenced by that whole business. So Mark was in contact with me back then and was just like, hey, you got to come back. And, Coral was just like, oh, da, 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 da. And I had a great time. In fact, I don't know if this is when you're going to post this, but I did it with Miz, and I just saw that he's going to be on Dancing with the Stars, the Miz. So I'm really bonded with the Miz, and he's been really an awesome friend over all these years. So I'm excited to see him. See how he's going to dance tonight on Dancing with the Stars.
Yeah, well, of course, the Miz is the biggest reality star of all time, and now a 5-time, 8-time, however many times champion. But what I was going to ask you was a lot of these challenge folks have just become professional challenge people. No one from your season is a professional challenge people. CT, Bananas, they just go and this is how they make their living. Which would you have been interested in that if you maybe stuck with it and said, I could go back and do these every other year and go to these and don't need to win. They're going to.
Hey, I mean, everything is just like I'm like the moss in the forest, and then all of a sudden the fucking trees grow up, and you don't get anything. You're just like the lowly moss. But yeah, by the time all this thing spun around, age out, and also how just physically demanding a lot of these challenges are. I mean, I witnessed going from like that funnier, sillier road rules, real world thing down in Cancun to the first gauntlet. And when I did the gauntlet, I watched the athletic, demanding insanity go from here to there. And once that happened, every one of those, it was like you train all year to do one of these things, and you're getting paid to do that. So no one's just that's not sleeping money. I mean, we never got close to that at the real world. The sleeping money that you don't see before winning the prizes. So all that sleeping money is just plenty of gravy there. So even if you don't even do nothing, that sleeping money is well worth it. So, and these people, yeah, they're professionals at it. They're always going to show up. They're going to work that whole angle ever since that gauntlet happened. And, but some of them are walking out of there. They're walking out of there with like, $1 million, all this kind of stuff. I'm like, oh, here, great. Here's another thing. I already got paid $100 an episode. And these people are getting $1 million down the line. Damn it.
So you would have done it if
what are these challenges? Like the design challenge, the drag queen challenge, the baking challenge. Like, why don't they do that? I'm like 50, the sewing challenge. I told that to Mark too. I was like, what the fuck? Here's a house challenge, how to clean a rug. I don't know. Here's like things like that. Like, for 50-year-olds, entertainment, get it together here. This whole shoot someone out of the cannon, eat a shark, jump out of a helicopter. It's boring now. It's boring, tedious.
To go all the way back. Go all the way back for me. So how did you learn about the show? How did you get casted? I don't think I've ever heard the story. I'm sure you've told it a million times. But when did you know about this? How do you, submit yourself? Tell me that story about way back then, how it all happened for you to get to where, to become one of the first reality stars.
Real estate. It all comes down to real estate. I had the first proposal loft. I had a big loft in Brooklyn, and they came to the house to look at it for renting it. And the people that came, the location managers and the producers and stuff like that, kicked it back, and then they just fell in love with my dog. And we had like a tennis court in our main room, and it was big. It had 23-foot ceilings, and it only had one bathroom, and it was Brooklyn. And back in '92, the real people lived in like Soho, where Cindy Crawford and the richest people in the world live. So I was like, what kids are living in Soho in a loft? That's just not real. But, the crew went out because they're just like, no, we're going to be shooting this show. We don't want to get on a damn train at like 3 a.m. to come back into Manhattan. So since then, they went back and they did, I think back to New York. I think Mrs. Show they shot in Brooklyn. But that's how I got involved with the show. They like came in and wanted the real estate, and we had just such a silly time. I mean, I was doing, I had worked in the Andy Warhol diaspora. I worked on his 15 Minutes of Fame show when I was in college doing cable stuff, and I worked with all of the different people, Taylor Mead, and all of his diaspora, like, people at Interview Magazine. So I had a lot of really interesting people going on, and I had a small design company with some college friends, and we had a big account that we had just landed with the Guggenheim Museum, and so I had a lot of things that were interesting in the background. At the time they couldn't even ask about gay. It's illegal. It was illegal. You could not. You could sue someone immediately if they defamed you or even they wrote anything about you. So that was like tactics. So they didn't even know that was going on. I didn't really think they were going to take an artist or someone that really hadn't been on TV on there, and that wasn't a big interest of mine. And so I guess the least interested I was, the more interested they became. And of course I just, me and my storytelling and craziness. And I don't know, they literally were interviewing me, and I didn't even know I was with the vice president of MTV because she's like 24. And I'm like, well, when am I going to meet these big honchos? I'm like, that's us. And I'm like, what? They're like, yeah, no, we need you. You're funny. You're interesting. I was more interesting then.
Well, I gotta say that.
Terribly handsome.
But now that I mean, I know this was danced around, but Julie was a dancer, Heather was a rapper, Becky is this folk singer, Andre. You guys all did have that artistic thing. But I will say, I mean, really the first gay reality television, the first gay TV. I mean, I'm not trying to kiss your ass, but I really felt like to have you be kind of the first gay guy that's on your TV every week in a show with other people who aren't. I really thought you were perfect for it because you were funny and there was nothing like it was just great. I think you should be definitely recognized more, and I hope that's are you recognized more?
I'm always like maybe a footnote or less. I mean, they really just jump right to Pedro, our sacrificial lamb, and so I'm just kind of like. I just, it'll be interesting. I thought about, I was never one to do a book or anything like that. And I just knew what the stakes were back then, and I was honored to be in that position and hopefully make connections. And I say this on the show, it was the allies. It was really reaching out and getting other people that were so diverse to see value in you and believe in you before you overwhelm them with something that was so insane that they had to back away from you. Like, here's my big gay problem, and then all of a sudden freak them out and then they're gone. You don't have anyone listening to you. So it was really important back then to really get to, and I've always been that way anyway, but just get to know everyone in that house and their background and get to know them as people. And then there's so much more that you can get from the community when they can see you as a person. And then, everyone does say that it's kind of nice jokes like, I've got a brother that's gay or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, and they do. So many people had that. There just was no way for not only were gay people closeted, but people that knew gay people also had to be closeted because there was such a toxic, pervasive stain in culture. It was just so okay call people faggot. It was so okay for like Dire Straits to like say, oh, this little faggot. All of these things were so pervasive all over culture, and it was just known that your life was just nowhere, and it was and that was the easiest kind of put down that it scared people. And there was no way to create allies with anybody else because you felt alone, even if you And then I always felt really bad because I was kind of like on the fence, like people. I wasn't. There were a lot more people that were more flamboyant. There were a lot more people that were dykish. There were people who were really picked on, and I was picked on too. But there were other people who just really couldn't hide whatsoever. And I was passionate, and I really felt like I needed to stand up for them. And we were in a community that, a lot of people were dying of AIDS back then. And that's what people thought of the gay community was like, it's a death sentence. Somebody, it's a death sentence or da-da-da-da. So I really felt like it was an opportunity. And that's what I feel most proud about. And that's why I wanted to go back and do this, because I think millennials who weren't born, they're 24 and they weren't even around in 2092 are looking at me like, oh, they said you were bisexual. They said, they go on with these labels aimed at me. Going, whoa, little kid, yeah, slow it down.
Well, I think our
piece of moss did a lot for your tree.
I know, and you're older than me, but I mean that show came on. I think I was in high school. I think my generation. It had never MTV had just sort of stopped playing music, or I guess they were doing TRL a little bit after. But I think we all have a fondness for that show because we all like watched it together. And did you see that? And then the next year with the LA group and Tammy and David, and it was just another great season. Then the page, it just kept getting better and better. They kept doing the casting right, and then reality TV. They started building a kind of a shell, and it was fun to watch. I don't know. Did you keep watching and just each season go, that's fake, or what that we had? Our season was better than this. Did you watch? What seasons were like, oh geez, this is out of control?
It also was like really kind of once again difficult. It's hard to imagine that Brooklyn did not have cable. They had such a war with Manhattan, and there were so many people that lived there that they would not provide people cable in Brooklyn. So we had the major channels in New York City, and back then it's hard to believe that there's only like 6 channels that you had access to, even when you had cable. Maybe you got TBS or something else, but there wasn't a lot of selections. So it was also very difficult to actually see the other shows as they progressed. And, I would check in and there was a little, I think, personal disappointment because, you give so much to a show and then all of a sudden you wind up on all these magazines and you really see how things changed and all of a sudden you're not part of it. You got paid $100 and they're like, bye, we got somebody else now. We're going to go here. And you're just like, wow. I know people get paid $500,000 for their story, their life story. Someone's going to go do like a bank robbery story and this, that, and the other. That network goes and pays someone $500,000 to make some movie for like whatever. And, here we gave away our story and our life for $100. So there was a little bit of that. But then I also fell into the trap when I did check in and see Los Angeles, or I would see the San Francisco cast. And I started to really just, go, oh, this Puck is an asshole. Puck is one of my favorite people. I mean, I got caught up in what I saw and bad me, that I went through this experience. And then all of a sudden I started to think of them when I first engaged Rachel, and I had to rethink my whole self. Cause we did a reunion. I think it was like, the third year or whatever. And they brought out the London cast they did different stories. We were in Universal and they brought everybody up and then they kind of set us all up and sent us out. And so Eric, Nies, and I went and picked up Rachel on a plane. And then we went out and I just realized, bad me, that I watched this TV show and I think I know who these people are and they're not. And I went and did this experience. And I think that's what led me to do the wedding video ultimately, was that once I got to know more of these people and the complexity of stuff, and I met Pedro, and he was not the easiest person in the world. I think he wasn't really super psyched when they branded me a bisexual. I mean, he was very like gay explosion, and I was like roadkill to him. So it was, there's a lot of things when you actually get to meet people outside of the show, how things go. So I've kind of learned a good, valuable lesson that way. But they do bring really incredible people to the camera and their stories. And they've done this year after year. It's a really good gift with the talent, the casting directors. I saw that you had Nathan on your show, and I love him. We did the gauntlet together. I'm so happy with his journey, where he was at and where he's gone. And we were just real thick as thieves and really, really tight during that time. And continued. I mean, he brought me up to like the Green Bay Packers game. He had a different girlfriend. It was so funny because they recognized me, and then all of a sudden I was being lifted around the Packers game. Like literally, all the people were like, "Oh my God, it's Norm!" And all of a sudden, I'm like almost 260 pounds and like 6'4", and they're like literally lifting me off, and I'm going way up into the upper deck and stuff. And so it's been really great, that experience of meeting a lot of the other casts, getting to know them through the years.
Yeah, I was gonna say, who are you? You said Puck. Have you talked to him in a while? And who else do you keep really close contact with? Like somebody you text like yesterday, a couple weeks ago.
Well, Rachel and Sean honestly live within 35 miles from me here, and they've been, my parents are wonderful Republicans, super conservatives. They speak all that. Rachel loves them. She shows up at any little thing. She's got 10 kids or 9 kids. She's got a lot of kids. And, if there's something going on or she's on Fox and she'll text my dad right back. It makes his day, so they've overwon me because they're like, oh God, and here's Norm with all of his liberal crazy friends. And then I have a lot of other friends too. I mean, like, I'm very diverse.
The way the world should be, Norm. The way the world should be.
Yeah.
We don't have to just live in our little pod of people.
And I try to explain that sometimes to a lot of the other cast members because they really get locked into stuff too. And they're like, what? How could you trust David Bean or that person? And I guess they didn't learn my lesson because, they really haven't gotten to get to know them. And I just, Rachel's one of the best mothers ever. Her kids, they are like amazing. They have done the best job at getting, these kids are unruly, just great. They're smart. They do things. They're so active in their life. I don't know how they do it. I'm myself. I'm exhausted, but obviously Julie and Heather are really very close to me. Definitely I'm pretty close. Corey lived with me for a while. I'm close with everyone in that wedding video. I'm super close with. I'm really close with Coral. I go on vacations with her down to Brazil. We have a hoot and Hanny.
I may have to pick your Rolodex because I have some more guests coming on, but I may bug you for a few of these. Coral would be an interesting get here on this little podcast. But
the gift for Gab.
NormanKorpi.com. The wedding, again, you'll be able to find. You'll see links to that here, and I'll put that in the description. It was going to be at Q Fest in Houston, but you'll be able to stream it soon after, I'm sure. You can find, obviously, Norm on Twitter and Instagram and all the social medias. He's out there. Norm, have I missed anything? Is there anything else you'd like to add? Because I always want to make sure my guest gets the last word.
Oh, no. It's just really appreciative that you've taken, you've invited me. You've been really patient. I've just been traveling and upside down. So I just really appreciate this time. And it really is nice to do an interview and also get to share on something like the wedding video that I spent a lot of time on. And so that makes me feel really nice. A lot of times I do a lot of interviews and sometimes, nothing ever gets sad. You're like, oh, I'm making, gingerbread cookies. And then no one sees the gingerbread cookies. So this is a good one for you to take a bite out of.
Thank you.
Yes, I appreciate it so much. So, thank you.
He is a pioneer, ladies and gentlemen. It's Norm from the first season of The Real World. I can't believe I got a chance to talk to Norm. I thank you, Norm, and I thank you for watching. Here's the pitch. Again, sponsored by Masses Restaurants. 5 locations, stlmasses.com. Check them out on the web if you're coming through St. Louis. Check out those menus, and we will see you next time.